MSNBC is basically, without saying it, you have, and I apologize in advance, you got to look at Yamiche here, and we haven't had to do this in a long while. Yeah. Golly, I see it in preview, and it hurts me a little bit just seeing it. But you've got to do it here. But they're even saying they're not quite clear on Tim Walz's military record, which, of course, is a huge conversation happening across the country right now, as it should be. Take a listen.
I get the sense that the Harris campaign is ready for these attacks, but I have to tell you, Kristen, they're not engaging directly on whether or not he was falsifying his record, his military record. They are, of course, as you said, pointing out that he does have a history of service, both in the National Guard, but also as a teacher, as someone who was a governor, as someone who was a congressional member. So they're sort of leaning in on the fact that he's someone who wants to serve America. And yesterday, when he was in Philadelphia, he was also making that point, saying that they want this to be a people-powered campaign and a people-centered administration if they are elected to the White House. But it's very interesting to see them say, yes, he does have a sort of a long history in the military and joined at 17, has trained people who did go into combat zones, is what one source told me, but also is not engaging directly on whether or not he falsified here.
So really some questioning and then also some supporting him and trying to give him some cover. Well, but he did, regardless, do a long time in the National Guard, in the military, even though it seems like he's not saying it. Before we get into this, though, I just want to play one more clip because Van Jones over on CNN said something similar, saying that he's been Tim Walz, that is, very loose with his language surrounding his time in the military and the Guard here. Take a listen.
To that point, do you think this is something that the campaign needs to address in a bigger way than they have?
Yeah, I think they should clean up. It's conceivable that he's been loose with his language or said stuff that's not. I mean, there's people are human beings on these campaign trails, and so. But now he's running for a major position. If he needs to clean it up, clean it up.
Here's the issue, though. It's not just cleaning up and being loose with language. Maybe you could use that description, but it's not just been loose since the campaign for being governor in Minnesota or since he was nominated 10 minutes ago for vice president. He's been loose and reckless, I think is the term you're looking for there, Van Jones, ever since the get-go on this. You can go back decades. And the Joker has been lying, whether it's lying about being a head coach for Mankato West, which I know very well growing up where I did in Rochester, or being this rank or that rank in the military, holding arms in combat, whatever it is. He's not loose with his language. The Joker's got a record of lying through his teeth. That I don't know how else you spin this, and they're trying their damnedest on the left and in the media. But I don't know how else you spin it other than, yeah, he's just a compulsive liar. That's what he does. He's like Joe. I mean, these stories, and maybe he believes them like Joe now. Because you tell yourself a lie enough, you start to believe it, right? That's true. That's just kind of basic psychology. But he's told these same lies. And not just these same ones as it pertains to military, but pertaining to a lot of things for a long time. That's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem. And what he was trying to do is trying to be deceptive about his military service. When he says, I was my unit was in a support position in Operation Enduring Freedom. Okay, well, let's examine that. The reason why he said that the way that he said it is because it makes it sound like his unit was at Kandahar or Bagram, at those bases there. In actuality, he was in Italy. So, was that in support of? Yes, of course it was. But when you break it down and talk to people who are actually in country, and Drew, you know this better than anybody, but you do have support positions that, are medical facilities in Ramstein, Germany. You've got them in Italy. You've got, different supply chains that, need to go in country to, keep the troops supported. But once you get in country, you do have bases like Kandahar and Bagram and Camp Leatherneck that, are your main bases. But from there, you've got forward operating bases. And then from there, you have units that go outside of the wire to go on patrol and do whatever they need to do when they're hunting down bad guys. So what he tried to do was conflate what he did with everything else, because everybody, who you talk to, who's been in the military, not everybody goes outside the wire or goes out on missions. That's just the way that it's set up.
Most don't.
Yeah, there has to be people back at the base to make sure that the helicopters are filled up, when they drop off supplies, and make sure the supplies get on helicopters and so forth. So with him saying, yeah, my unit was there in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, it's like, it's true, but come on, that's not what you were doing by saying that.
Right. That's a pretty big stretch. It just is. Well, and what's so I don't get anything about U.S. society and our culture and our government or any of that stuff anymore, because it's all just so broken. And as we always talk about, we're just living in this bizarro world. But which you should not do. This is the most important thing. But put aside for a second the fact that he's a straight up communist. We went into that hardcore yesterday. We won't beat that dead horse today. Especially, we just don't want horses around Tim Walz, because he's going to ingest their semen if they are. But you take that aside for a second, okay? Put him and his political values and ideals aside. He's just not a trustworthy person. That's what he's proving. And then he would be the number 2 in command of the United States of America, one step away from the presidency. So when Cam goes down for syphilis or whatever STD she gets from just being a straight up whore, he's the guy. And he's someone that no one can trust, because he's never been honest about who or what he is. That's a massive problem. They're going to cover this up. They're going to give him protection and cover. I just don't know how you get past such huge and obvious character flaws.
Whether you live at the beach, are going to one, or just want to imagine yourself there, Red Beach Nation has the comfy, patriotic apparel for the occasion. Founded by a former counterterrorism officer and war veteran of both the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, Red Beach Nation is committed to upholding the American values and principles that we all hold so dear. So grab your swag and rep the nation. Visit redbeachnation.com and use the promo code on your screen to save 10% off. Again, that's redbeachnation.com.